Right, so we've been getting quite a few questions about the Lexus M104 turbo build. How much power is it running? What sort of boost levels are you running? So in this video I'm going to answer all of these questions, and if I forget something or leave something out, drop a comment down below and we will reply to you, or I could even make another video answering your question. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So the engine came from a Mercedes S320, I think it was a W140. It's the 3.2 litre M104 992. The engine is completely rebuilt from the ground up, so it got new bearings, new head gasket, which is stock, but it's got ARP Head Studs, stock pistons, which are known to handle quite a bit of power. The connecting rods are forged, they're from Turbo Bandit. I think they're 1mm shorter, which has brought the compression ratio down to 8.5. Other than that, the cylinder head is completely stock. I do have double valve springs for it, but I don't actually have them in the car yet, so we're just revving to a safe 6,700 RPM. After I'd built the M104 and prepared it for some boost, it was time to rip out the good old reliable 1GFE. I had this engine turboed for a few years, running super low boost, and it was unbelievably reliable. It was really slow, but it didn't blow up on me. I'll put a little sound clip in here just for comparison. We set the M104 into its new home using an OM606 front sump. I was also running a BMW gearbox. I knew it was going to be a tight squeeze, so we tried to set the engine in as low and as far back as we could. After we had the engine set in, it was time to make up some engine mounts. I tried to keep these as simple as I could. I used some cardboard and welded up some angle mounts. The process was exactly the same on the other side, nothing fancy. I just used the original IS200 rubber engine mounts. The engine lean angle made it a little bit tricky. As you can see from the video, the engine cylinder head is up quite close to the heater matrix pipes where they enter the engine bay. For the gearbox mount, we just used some rectangular box section with angle iron at each side. I welded 2 tabs on and cut slots for the rubber mounts for the gearbox to bolt onto. Super simple. I'm using a Billet Flywheel from an OM606, a Sachs 765 pressure plate, 6 Puk sprung clutch from Tenacity. It's a heavy pedal, but it's a really cheap way of holding a lot of torque. The 2-piece prop shaft is custom made. I retained the rubber donut on the back side of the gearbox. The center carrier bearing is from a BMW 530D. On the differential side, I used a drift motion adapter. This is a really nice piece of kit. I wanted to make the rear end as strong as possible, so I opted for the FIGS subframe adapter kit. It's a weld-in bit of angle. You remove the bushes at the back and they just weld in solid. This allowed me to use a 3.2 ratio diff from an Aristo. Combined with the BMW gearbox, this gives me quite a good ratio. In terms of fuel, it's running a single Walbro 450. The pump was physically taller, so I had to shorten the IS200 fuel hanger. It fits pretty well with a few modifications. I'm running 10mm fuel lines, which is probably overkill, but so far it's working good. I also modified the fuel hanger to take these bulkhead fittings for the positive and negative. These works do a really good fuel pump hardwire kit. I relocated the battery to the boot, ran new thicker gauge wire, installed 2 bulkhead fittings. These bigger fuel pumps pull so much more amps, this is super important. The exhaust manifold is custom made. The oval ports on the cylinder head for the M104 made this quite difficult, but I got there in the end. Because of the lean angle of the engine, it was quite hard to fit a wastegate. After a lot of thinking, I opted just to weld the wastegate straight to the housing of the turbo. This worked really well. I back purged it. The exhaust housing on this is stainless steel and it welded really nice. I've done about 500 miles on this engine so far and no cracks. If you're going to try and do this yourself, just take it really slowly, preheat the housing and let it cool down super slow. I used a Grady intercooler. I think this was maybe from a Skyline. I just cut some holes behind my front lights to run the piping, tried to keep it as short as possible to help the spool. It's 2.5 inch piping stepping up to 2.75 inch into the throttle body. I welded in a temperature sensor bung just before the throttle, kept the intercooling as short as possible and nice and flowing. Next we move on to the downpipe. It's 3.5 inch, which is probably overkill. The rest of the exhaust is 3.5 inch as well, into a Profusion exhaust resonator. I kept the exhaust resonator in the original position of the car. It then flows into an epoxy muffler at the very back. I wanted to take on the challenge of wiring this car myself. The HP Academy online courses were a great way to learn how motorsport ECUs work and how to wire them. I wanted to keep the wiring of the car as simple as possible, so I used a minimum amount of sensors. The car doesn't run an e-throttle or an idle control valve. I was able to keep it super simple by just using idle ignition control through the ECU. This works really well because the engine's quite big and torquey. I chose to mount the Link ECU inside the car in the glove box. If I was doing a project like this again, I would probably mount the ECU in the engine bay closer to where the original ECU is located. Running the two ECUs simultaneously definitely made things a lot easier, as the factory ECU still controls the engine immobiliser. There's probably lots and lots of things that I've left out, so if you have any questions, be sure to comment underneath and we'll post a reply. We're also going to make a video on tuning the car and what we learned. We've only had the car on the road, we haven't had it on the dyno yet, so it's been a bit of a learning curve. So stay tuned for them videos. And if you've watched this far, thanks very much. Consider subscribing, like the video, and we'll see you on the next one.